Back up, now! Daniel Cole's voice cut through the coffee shop like a blade. The man in the expensive suit had been crowding the woman, telling her to smile, calling her names when she wouldn't. Now he was staring at Daniel, at the look in his eyes, the stance of someone who'd carried dying people out of burning buildings. The man left without another word. Daniel paid for the stranger's coffee and walked out. He didn't ask her name, didn't want anything. He had no idea she was worth $2.3 billion. And he had no idea that protecting her had just painted a target on his daughter's back. Stay until the end. Comment your city. I want to see how far this story travels. Hey, I'm talking to you. The man stepped closer to the woman in the gray coat. Too close. The kind of close that wasn't accidental. It's just a compliment. Smile more. You'd be prettier if you... Daniel Cole moved before his brain caught up. 3 steps. Between them. Hand still holding his 4-year-old daughter's fingers. Back up. The man turned ready for a fight. Then stopped. Daniel knew what he was seeing. The same thing every bully saw when they pushed too far and found something that pushed back harder. Not anger. Something colder. The look of a man who'd pulled bodies from rubble and didn't flinch at raised voices in coffee shops. I was just... No, you weren't. Daniel kept his voice flat. Conversational. You were harassing her because you thought no one would stop you. You were wrong. Now walk out that door and don't come back. The man's jaw worked. His eyes flicked to the watching crowd, the phones that might be recording the woman behind Daniel, who still hadn't said a word. Whatever, she's not even that hot. He left. The bell over the door chimed behind him. Daniel exhaled slowly and turned back to the counter. The barista was staring at him like he'd just defused a bomb. Large black coffee, Daniel said. Hot chocolate with extra marshmallows, and whatever she's having. He tilted his head toward the woman without looking at her. On me. You don't have to. Already did. He paid, collected his drinks, and headed for the exit. His daughter Emma skipped beside him, hot chocolate clutched in both hands, completely unbothered by what had just happened. Daddy, that man was mean. Yeah, sweetheart. Some people are. But you made him go away. That's what we do when someone's being mean. We stand up. Like superheroes. Something like that? Wait. The woman's voice stopped him at the door. Daniel turned. She was looking at him with an expression he couldn't read. Not gratitude exactly. Something more complicated. Assessment. Like she was trying to solve him. I'd like to know your name. Daniel. I'm Emma. His daughter waved hot chocolate sloshing dangerously. That's Mr. Whiskers. He's my bunny. He says your coat is shiny. Something cracked in the woman's professional mask. A tiny smile. Real, not performed. Hello, Emma. Hello, Mr. Whiskers. I'm Victoria. That's a princess name. So I've been told. Victoria's eyes moved back to Daniel. Thank you. That situation could have gotten worse. Anyone would have done it. No, they wouldn't have. She held his gaze for a moment longer than comfortable. Have a good day, Daniel. He nodded once and pushed through the door. That was supposed to be the end of it. 5:47 a.m. Same as yesterday. Same as every morning for 2 years. Daniel's alarm was set for 5:50. He never needed it. His body woke 3 minutes early every single day, trained by years of firefighting shifts and 18 months of sleeping next to a baby monitor, terrified that if he slept too deeply, something would go wrong. Something had already gone wrong. The worst thing. But his body hadn't gotten the memo. He lay still in the darkness, listening to Emma breathe through the monitor. In, out, in, out. Still alive. Still there. Still his. Some mornings confirming that was the only thing that got him vertical. Daniel swung his legs out of bed. Cold floor. Dark room. Another day to get through. The bathroom mirror showed him what he always saw. 38 years old. Gray spreading through brown hair. Lines carved around eyes that had seen too much. Not old, but worn. Like furniture that had been used hard and never refinished. He splashed water on his face and didn't look at the space where Rachel's things used to be. The empty medicine cabinet shelf. The hook where her robe had hung. 2 years. Some days it felt like yesterday. Some days it felt like another lifetime. Daddy! Emma stood in the kitchen doorway, blonde hair tangled, clutching Mr. Whiskers. Rachel's eyes looked out of her daughter's face. Blue like summer. Some days that was a gift. Some days it was a knife. Morning, sweetheart. Mr. Whiskers says he's hungry. What does Mr. Whiskers want for breakfast? Pancakes, with chocolate chips, 100 of them. How about 5? Mr. Whiskers says 8. Mr. Whiskers drives a hard bargain. 6, final offer. Deal. Daniel lifted her into her booster seat and started mixing batter. This part he could do. Routine. Predictable. 6 chocolate chips evenly distributed. Maple syrup in the small pitcher. Milk in the purple cup, the only acceptable cup. Control the variables and the world stayed manageable. Daddy? Yeah, sweetheart. Are you sad today? Daniel's hands stopped moving. What makes you ask that? Your face looks like when you're thinking about mommy. 4 years old, and she could read him like a headline. Daniel crouched down to her level. I think about mommy every day, but that doesn't mean I'm sad. It means I loved her very much. I think about her too. Emma's voice got small. But sometimes I can't remember what she looked like. Is that bad? Something cracked in Daniel's chest. No, baby, that's not bad. That's why we have pictures, so we can remember. He pointed to the photograph on the wall. Rachel holding newborn Emma. Exhausted and glowing. The happiest day of their lives, neither of them knowing how few days were left. She's pretty, Emma said. She was beautiful, just like you. The crack eased slightly. Daniel went back to pancakes. Whoa, 7:52 a.m., 2 blocks from Little Stars preschool. Daddy, can we get hot chocolate? Daniel checked the clock. 8 minutes until drop-off. Stopping would make him late for the Henderson job. But Emma was looking at him with Rachel's eyes, and she asked for so little, and some battles weren't worth winning. Quick stop. Harbor Coffee. That's where it happened. The man. The woman. Daniel stepping between them without thinking, because that's what you did when someone was being threatened. That's who he was, even when he was trying to be invisible. 18 months of keeping his head down, building furniture, raising his daughter, staying out of the world's way. One moment of instinct, and he'd stepped right back into something. Emma didn't stop talking about it. Daddy, that lady was really pretty, not like mommy pretty different pretty, and her coat was so shiny. Mr. Whiskers liked her, he told me. Do you think she'll come back to the coffee shop? Can we see her again? She had a princess name, Victoria. That's from a queen, right? Queen Victoria, yes. Was she a nice queen? She ruled England for a long time. Whether she was nice depends on who you ask. I hope our Victoria is nice. She seemed nice, sad, but nice. Like you, Daddy. Daniel glanced in the rearview mirror. I'm not sad. You're a little sad. It's okay. I'm a little sad too sometimes. About mommy. But then I remember she's watching from heaven, and I feel better. Do you think she watched you be brave today? I bet she was proud. Daniel's throat tightened. He didn't answer. Couldn't. Emma filled the silence easily. Mrs. Patterson says, I'm very good at sharing. I shared my crackers with Tyler, even though Tyler picks his nose. That's what heroes do. Share even when it's hard. Like you shared that lady's coffee. You're a hero, Daddy. I'm not a hero, sweetheart. You used to run into fires. That's hero stuff. That was my job. Mr. Whiskers says it still counts. Daniel pulled into his workshop parking space and sat for a moment after cutting the engine. His hands were shaking slightly. Not from the confrontation in the coffee shop that had been nothing, barely a blip on his threat radar. From Emma's words. She thought he was a hero. She thought Rachel was watching. She didn't know that he woke up at 5:47 every morning and lay in the dark, afraid to move. Afraid that if he stopped being vigilant for even a second, he'd lose her too. She didn't know that he'd stopped being a firefighter because after Rachel died, he couldn't face other people's tragedies when he hadn't been able to prevent his own. She didn't know that the furniture business was just a place to hide, something productive that kept his hands busy and his mind quiet and didn't require him to feel anything. She thought he was brave. Daniel had never felt less brave in his life. "You look like hell." Dave Morrison slid into the booth across from Daniel, 2 cups of coffee already on the table. Harbor Coffee Noon, their regular spot. "Thanks, you're a real confidence booster." "I'm your friend. Friends tell the truth." Dave took a sip of his coffee. "You sleeping?" "Enough. Eating. When I remember." "Daniel." "What?" Dave leaned forward. He was a big man, gone slightly soft since retiring from the department, but still carrying himself like someone who'd commanded fire crews for 30 years. "When's the last time you did anything that wasn't about Emma or work?" "I don't have time for—" "That's not what I asked." Daniel stared at his coffee. "I don't know what you want me to say." "I want you to say you're living your life, not just surviving it." Dave's voice softened. "Rachel's been gone 2 years. At some point you have to stop holding your breath and start breathing again." "I'm breathing fine." "You're going through the motions. There's a difference." Dave sat back. "Maria wants you and Emma over for dinner. Sunday. Don't even try to say no." "I wasn't—" "You were absolutely going to make an excuse. I've known you for 12 years, Danny. I know every trick." Dave pointed at him. "Sunday, 5 p.m. Bring Emma. Let her see what family looks like beyond just the 2 of you." Daniel wanted to argue. Wanted to explain that he was fine, that Emma was fine, that their carefully constructed routine was working perfectly and didn't need interruption. But Dave had been there, after Rachel died. When everyone else stopped calling after the first month, Dave showed up every week. Sometimes they talked. Sometimes they just sat. Either way, he never stopped. "Fine. Sunday." "Good." Dave grinned. "Now tell me about this morning. Word is, you got into it with some suit at the coffee counter." "Who told you that?" "Jimmy saw the whole thing. Said you went full command voice on some guy who was harassing a woman. Said the guy practically ran out of here." Daniel rubbed his face. "It wasn't a big deal. Jimmy said the woman was gorgeous. High-end clothes, expensive everything. Said she looked at you after like you were the most interesting thing she'd seen in years. She was just surprised someone stepped in. That's it." "Uh-huh." Dave's eyes were knowing. "You get her number." "Why would I know? I helped her. I paid for her coffee, I left. That's it." "Too bad. About time you started noticing women again." "I notice women fine." "Looking isn't noticing. Connecting is noticing. And you haven't connected with anyone since Rachel." Daniel's jaw tightened. "I have a 4-year-old daughter. I have a business to run. I don't have time for connections, complications." Dave studied him for a long moment. "You know what Rachel would say if she could hear you right now? Don't." She'd say stop using Emma as an excuse to hide. She'd say, "I said don't." Daniel's voice came out sharper than he intended. He took a breath. "I'm doing the best I can. I'm keeping it together. I'm keeping Emma safe and healthy and happy. That's enough." "Is it?" "It has to be." They sat in silence. Dave didn't push further. He knew where the lines were. "Sunday," Dave said finally. 5 p.m. Don't be late." "I won't." Daniel finished his coffee and went back to work. The Henderson table wasn't going to build itself. That night after dinner and bath and 3 stories, Emma always negotiated for more. Daniel sat in the dark living room with a beer he wasn't drinking. The apartment was quiet. Emma was asleep. Mr. Whiskers was standing guard on her pillow. Daniel looked at the photograph on the wall. Rachel, Emma, the hospital blanket. That expression on Rachel's face, exhausted, terrified, completely in love. She'd had 2.5 years after that photo. 2.5 years to be Emma's mother. Not enough. Not nearly enough. And now it was just Daniel, trying to be both parents, trying to fill a space that couldn't be filled, trying to keep his daughter safe in a world that had already taken so much from her. "I don't know what I'm doing," he said to the empty room. "I'm making it up, every single day, and I'm so tired." The photograph didn't answer. Daniel finished his beer and went to bed. Tomorrow would be the same as today. Structure, routine, control, the only variables he could manage. Yeah, across the city, Victoria Shaw sat at her desk in a penthouse that cost more than Daniel would earn in 3 lifetimes. The file was open on her screen. Daniel Cole, 38. Former firefighter, Seattle Fire Department. Distinguished service. Multiple commendations. Medical leave following wife's death. Currently self-employed custom furniture. Rachel Chen Cole. Deceased. Brain aneurysm. Sudden. No warning signs. Emma Cole. Age 4. Little Stars Preschool. Current residence rental apartment. Modest neighborhood. Social media none. Criminal record. None. Debts none. Net worth. Approximately $47,000. On paper, Daniel Cole was nobody. A widowed father trying to get by. But Victoria hadn't built an empire by trusting paper. She'd watched the way he moved. No hesitation, no calculation. He'd put himself between her and a threat without knowing anything about her. Not her name, not her money, not what she could do for him. Then he'd paid for her coffee and left. Everyone wanted something from Victoria Shaw. Everyone. Even the ones who pretended otherwise. Especially the ones who pretended otherwise. But Daniel Cole had walked away. Victoria picked up her phone and dialed her assistant. "Clear my afternoon tomorrow. I have somewhere to be." "Of course, Ms. Shaw. Should I arrange a car?" "I'll drive myself." Victoria looked out at the Seattle skyline, lights glittering like scattered diamonds. "And Catherine, run a deeper background check. I want to know everything." "Is there a concern?" "I don't know yet. That's the problem." Victoria hung up and stared at the photograph in the file. Daniel Cole's driver's license. Unsmiling. Tired eyes. The face of a man who had nothing to offer her. And maybe that's what made him dangerous. She intended to find out. 2 days later, the black Range Rover appeared. Daniel noticed it 3 cars back when he left Little Stars Preschool with Emma. Noticed it make the same turn he did. Then another. Then a third. His hands tightened on the steering wheel. "Daddy, can we get pizza tonight?" "Maybe, sweetheart." "Mr. Whiskers wants pepperoni. I want cheese. We could get half and half." That's a good compromise. 4th turn. The Range Rover followed. Daniel's pulse stayed steady. 12 years as a firefighter had taught him how to think clearly under pressure. Assess. Plan. Act. He wasn't driving home, not with Emma in the car, not until he knew what this was. He pulled into the Safeway parking lot. Chose a spot near the entrance. Good sight lines, plenty of witnesses. Cut the engine. The Range Rover parked 3 spaces down. "Stay in your seat, sweetheart." "Are we getting groceries?" "Maybe. Just wait for Daddy, okay?" The driver's door of the Range Rover opened. Victoria Shaw stepped out. She looked different in daylight. Less armor. Dark jeans, cream sweater hair down around her shoulders. Still expensive. Everything about her whispered money, but more human than she'd seemed in the coffee shop. She walked toward his truck with the confidence of someone used to approaching situations on her own terms. Daniel rolled down his window. Following people is generally considered stalking. I prefer persistent networking. Her voice carried the same controlled calm as before, but there was something underneath it. Nervousness, maybe, or anticipation. I apologize for the dramatic approach. Your contact information proved remarkably difficult to locate. That's intentional. I gathered. She pulled a business card from her pocket and held it out. I'd like to take you to lunch. Tomorrow, if you're available. Daniel didn't take the card. Why? The directness seemed to catch her off guard. Most people probably didn't question Victoria Shaw's invitations. Because I'd like to know more about the man who helped me without expecting anything in return. You already know what you need to know. I saw someone in trouble, I stepped in, I left. That's it. No mystery to solve. I disagree. Daddy, is that the shiny coat lady? Emma's face appeared at the window, bright with recognition. Victoria's expression shifted immediately, the professional mask cracking to reveal something softer. Hello again, Emma. Hello, Mr. Whiskers. Hi. We're maybe getting pizza tonight. Do you like pizza? I do, actually. Very much. What's your favorite kind? Margarita. Simple but perfect when it's done right. I don't know that one. Is it good? It's tomato, cheese, and basil. Very classic. That sounds boring. You should try pepperoni. Victoria laughed, a real sound, unguarded, nothing like the controlled woman Daniel had met 2 days ago. I'll take that under advisement. Daniel felt the situation sliding away from him. Emma had that effect. She could disarm anyone. Ms. Shaw. Victoria. Please. Victoria. The name felt strange in his mouth, too familiar. I appreciate the invitation, but I'm not sure what you're expecting from this. Conversation. Nothing more. She extended the business card again. My direct number is on the back. Call me if you change your mind. This time, Daniel took it. Heavy cardstock. Embossed lettering. Shaw Development. CEO. She's really pretty, Daddy, Emma said as the Range Rover pulled away. And she laughs nice. Not fake like some grown-ups. Daniel looked at the card in his hand, at the handwritten number on the back. Yeah, he said quietly. She does. That night, after Emma was asleep, Daniel sat on his bed and stared at the business card. CEO of Shaw Development. He'd looked it up. Commercial real estate, office buildings, shopping centers, mixed-use developments across the Pacific Northwest. Net worth somewhere in the billions, according to Forbes. Billions, with a B. And she wanted to have lunch with him. A furniture maker who lived in a rental apartment and drove a truck with 180,000 miles on it. It didn't make sense. People like Victoria Shaw didn't pursue people like Daniel Cole. Not for lunch, not for conversation, not for anything. The worlds didn't overlap. Unless she wanted something. But what could he possibly have that a billionaire would want? Daniel's phone buzzed. Dave. Tell me you're not still awake obsessing about some woman. I'm not obsessing. You're absolutely obsessing. Maria says she can hear you thinking from across the city. Maria's in bed. Maria knows things. It's spooky. Dave's voice softened. What's going on, Danny? Daniel told him. The Range Rover. The parking lot. The business card with the handwritten number. The way Victoria had laughed when Emma suggested she try pepperoni. So call her, Dave said when he finished. It's not that simple. It's exactly that simple. She gave you her number. She asked you to lunch. Call her. She's a billionaire, Dave. She owns half the commercial real estate in Seattle. So what does someone like that want with someone like me? Maybe she wants exactly what she said. Conversation, connection. Someone who doesn't look at her and see dollar signs. That's not how the world works. Maybe not your world, but you've been hiding in your world for 2 years, Danny. Maybe it's time to see what else is out there. Daniel didn't answer. Call her, Dave said. What's the worst that happens? You have one awkward lunch and never see her again. At least you'll know. And what's the best that happens? I don't know, that's kind of the point. After Dave hung up, Daniel sat in the dark for a long time, turning the business card over in his fingers. At 11:47 p.m., he sent a text. Thursday, 10 a.m., Harbor Coffee. The response came in seconds. Thank you. I'll be there. Daniel set down his phone and stared at the ceiling. He was probably making a mistake. Probably opening a door that should stay closed. Probably inviting complications into a life that ran on the absence of complications. But Emma's voice echoed in his head. She laughs nice, not fake like some grown-ups. And Dave's, what's the worst that happens Thursday? He'd find out. Thursday arrived gray and drizzling Seattle at its most stereotypical. Daniel dropped Emma at preschool, stopped at the workshop to check on the Henderson table, and made it to Harbor Coffee at 9:55. Victoria was already there. She sat at a corner table, hands wrapped around a cup, watching the door. When Daniel walked in, something flickered across her face. Relief, maybe. Like she hadn't been sure he'd show. You're early, he said, sliding into the seat across from her. Force of habit. I hate being late. She pushed a second cup toward him. Black, no pretense. That's what your friend said you order. You talked to Dave. I talked to the barista who served you yesterday. Apparently you're a regular. Victoria's expression was unreadable. I like to be prepared. Most people would call that stalking. Most people don't build companies from nothing. She took a sip of her drink. Preparation isn't stalking. It's due diligence. Daniel wanted to be annoyed, wanted to see her investigation as an invasion of privacy. But something about the way she said it, matter-of-fact, unapologetic, reminded him of how he'd been on the job. Always knowing the layout before entering a burning building. Always having a backup plan. What else did your due diligence tell you? That you were a firefighter for 12 years. That you left after your wife died. That you make furniture now. Good furniture, from what I've been told. That you have a 4-year-old daughter who you pick up from preschool every day at exactly 4 p.m. Victoria set down her cup. That you don't date, don't socialize, don't do much of anything except work and parent. Thorough. I told you. I like to be prepared. So why are we here? Daniel leaned back in his chair. You know everything about me. What could lunch possibly add? I know facts. Facts aren't the same as knowing someone. Victoria's gaze was steady. I want to know why a man with your background, your training, your reputation builds furniture for a living. I want to know why you stepped between me and that man in the coffee shop without knowing anything about me. I want to know why you paid for my drink and left without even asking my name. Those aren't mysteries. I build furniture because I needed a job that let me be home for Emma. I stepped in because someone was being harassed. I left because that's what you do when the problem is solved. That's what decent people do. Most people aren't decent. That's a cynical view. It's a realistic one. Something shifted in Victoria's expression, a crack in the careful control. I've spent 20 years building my company. Do you know how many people in that time have done something for me without wanting something in return? How many? One. You. Daniel didn't know what to say to that. The coffee between them felt like a boundary, something neither of them was ready to cross. Why does that matter so much? He asked finally. Because I've been surrounded by agendas my entire life. My father had an agenda. My mother has an agenda. My ex-husband had an agenda. Everyone I meet, business partners, investors, employees, they all want something. Access. Money. The association with my name. Victoria's voice stayed level, but there was an undertone of exhaustion, of loneliness. And then you walked into that coffee shop and helped me because it was the right thing to do. No calculation, no expectation, just decency. I'm not that special. Anyone would have. No, they wouldn't have. Victoria leaned forward. I've been in situations like that before. Harassment, intimidation, men who thought they had a right to my attention. Do you know how many people have ever stepped in? Daniel waited. 0. Until you. The word hung between them. Daniel thought about all the times he'd responded to calls as a firefighter. All the times he'd run into burning buildings while everyone else ran out. He'd never thought of it as special. It was just what you did, what the job required. But maybe not everyone saw it that way. Maybe for someone like Victoria, surrounded by people who calculated every interaction, basic decency was extraordinary. I'm not looking for a relationship, he said carefully. I have Emma. I have my work. My life is full. I'm not offering a relationship. I'm offering conversation. Maybe friendship if that's something you're open to. Victoria's voice softened. I don't have many friends. Real ones, I mean. The kind who see me as a person instead of an opportunity. What about your family? My mother and I don't speak. My father's been dead for 15 years. I have a brother who tolerates me when we're forced to interact at family functions. She paused. I have a therapist who I see twice a week and an assistant who manages my life. That's my inner circle. That sounds lonely. It is. The admission came out raw, unguarded. It's incredibly lonely, but I've never known how to fix it. I don't know how to connect with people who don't want something from me. Daniel stared at her. At the careful mask that had cracked open just enough to show something real underneath. Pain. Isolation. The particular exhaustion of someone who had everything except the things that actually mattered. He recognized it because he saw the same thing in his mirror every morning. I'm not good at this, he said. Connection, friendship, whatever you want to call it. I spent 10 years running into fires and 2 years trying not to fall apart. I don't know how to be normal anymore. Maybe we could figure it out together. Victoria's eyes were fixed on his. No expectations, no agendas, just two people who are bad at connection trying to be slightly less bad at it. Daniel wanted to say no, wanted to protect his careful routine, his controlled life, the walls he'd built so carefully after Rachel died. But Victoria was looking at him the way Emma sometimes did, with hope and fear, mixed together, afraid of rejection, but unable to stop reaching out anyway. Okay, he heard himself say. Friends, but I have rules. Name them. Emma comes first, always. If something conflicts with her, I'm out, no discussion. Of course. I work normal hours. I'm not available for fancy dinners or society events or whatever billionaires do for fun. I can work around that. And if this gets complicated, if it starts affecting my daughter or my stability, I walk away. No guilt trips, no drama. Understood. Victoria extended her hand across the table. Friends. Daniel shook it. Her grip was firm. Cool. Certain. Friends, he agreed. Something eased in Victoria's expression. She sat back, and for the first time since he'd met her, she looked almost relaxed. So, she said, tell me about the furniture business. Daniel almost laughed. That's your opening question. I'm curious. You went from running into burning buildings to building dining tables. That's a significant pivot. It's not as dramatic as it sounds. I needed something I could do from home, something with my hands, something that didn't involve other people's emergencies. Daniel shrugged. My grandfather was a carpenter. He taught me the basics when I was a kid. Figured I'd pick it back up. Do you like it? I like that it's mine. I like that if I make a mistake, no one dies. I like that at the end of the day, there's something real that I built. He paused. I like that it's quiet. After 12 years of fire alarms and emergency calls, I imagine quiet is valuable. More than you know. Victoria nodded slowly. I understand that. The appeal of control, of building something you can predict. Is that what your company is for you? Sometimes. Other times it feels like a monster I created that's now running my life instead of the other way around. She smiled wryly. But that's probably a conversation for another day. They talked for an hour, then another. The lunch crowd came and went around them. Daniel found himself saying things he hadn't said out loud in years about Rachel, about the night she died, about the numb months afterward when he'd moved through life like a ghost. Victoria listened, really listened. Not with the professional attention of someone calculating angles, but with the focused presence of someone who understood what it meant to carry invisible weight. And she shared things too. The father who'd told her she'd never amount to anything. The marriage at 25 to a man her family approved of. The divorce at 27 when she realized she'd rather be alone than invisible. The years of building and fighting and proving until she looked up one day and realized she'd won, but she'd won alone. I should go, Daniel said, finally checking his watch. I have to pick up Emma. Of course. Victoria stood smoothing her sweater. Thank you for this. For giving me a chance. Don't make me regret it. I'll do my best. They walked out together. At the door, Victoria paused. Same time next week. Daniel hesitated, then nodded. Same time next week. 3 weeks passed. Coffee became lunch. Lunch became dinner early, casual at places where no one would recognize Victoria Shaw and wonder why she was eating with a furniture maker. Emma met Victoria again, this time at a park near Daniel's apartment. She'd approved immediately, declaring Victoria nice but serious, and demanding to know if she could do cartwheels. Victoria could not, but she tried anyway, and Emma's delighted laughter at the failed attempt was the first genuine joy Daniel had heard from her in months. Things were good. Careful, controlled, but good. Then the social worker appeared. Daniel was picking up Emma from Little Stars when a woman in a gray suit approached. Tired eyes. Clipboard. The particular expression of someone delivering bad news. Mr. Cole, I'm Patricia Rodriguez from Child Protective Services. I need to speak with you about your daughter. Daniel's blood went cold. Is something wrong? We received a complaint, anonymous, regarding Emma's welfare. Ms. Rodriguez's voice was neutral, professional. We're required to investigate all complaints. Could we schedule a home visit? A complaint about what? I can't discuss details until we've conducted our assessment. Standard procedure. Daniel's hands curled into fists at his sides. He forced his voice to stay calm. Thursday, 4 p.m. That works. Please have documentation ready, pay stubs, Emma's medical records, proof of housing, standard procedure. She left. Daniel stood frozen in the preschool parking lot, mind racing. A complaint. Anonymous. About Emma. Who would file a complaint, and about what? He kept their apartment clean. Emma was healthy, happy, never missed a doctor's appointment. He was doing everything right. Unless... the man from the coffee shop. The one he'd confronted. Cold certainty settled in Daniel's gut. This was retaliation. It had to be. That night after Emma was asleep, Daniel called Victoria. She answered on the second ring. Daniel, is everything okay? No. His voice came out rough. Someone reported me to CPS. They're doing a home visit Thursday. What? He could hear her sitting up, her voice sharpening. On what grounds? Anonymous complaint. They won't tell me details. Daniel paced his small living room. It's him, the guy from the coffee shop, has to be. I'll have my lawyers make some calls. Find out exactly what was reported. I don't want your lawyers fighting my battles. This isn't about lawyers fighting battles. This is about information. If we know what was reported, we can prepare properly. Victoria's voice was steady, controlled, the CEO voice. Let me help. Daniel wanted to refuse. Wanted to handle it himself, prove he didn't need anyone, maintain the illusion of self-sufficiency he'd constructed so carefully. But Emma's face flashed through his mind. Her blue eyes. Rachel's eyes. He couldn't risk losing her over pride. "Okay," he said. "Make the calls." Thursday at 4 p.m., 2 social workers arrived at Daniel's apartment. Ms. Rodriguez and a younger man named Chen, who took notes on everything. They inspected every room. Lily's bedroom with its organized toys and books. The kitchen with its child-proof locks and healthy food. The bathroom with its step stool and medications stored out of reach. They asked Emma questions with gentle voices. Did Daddy ever get angry? Did she feel safe? Did anyone ever hurt her? Emma answered with 4-year-old honesty. Yes, Daddy made her eat vegetables. Yes, he had rules about bedtime. No, he never yelled or hit or did any of the scary things they were asking about. Daddy reads me extra stories if I ask nicely, she said. And he makes pancakes with chocolate chips, 6 of them because we compromised. After 2 hours, the social workers closed their notebooks. Mr. Cole, Ms. Rodriguez said, I'm going to be direct. The complaint we received suggested neglect and possible instability. What I've seen is a single father doing an exemplary job. Your home is safe, Emma is healthy and clearly bonded with you. I see no evidence of the concerns raised. Daniel felt something loosen in his chest. So it's done. We'll file our report recommending no further action. The complaint stays on file, but unless new concerns are raised, this matter is closed. She stood offering her hand. For what it's worth, you're doing a great job. Lily is lucky to have you. After they left, Daniel sat on the couch and pulled Emma into his lap. His hands were shaking. Daddy, are you okay? Yeah, sweetheart. I'm okay. Those people asked a lot of questions. They just wanted to make sure you're happy and safe. I am happy and safe. Emma nestled against his chest. You always keep me safe. That's your job. The simple faith in her voice cracked something open in Daniel's chest. He held her tighter than necessary and let himself feel the terror he'd been suppressing for 4 days. Someone had tried to take her, tried to use the system to rip apart the only thing he had left. And they'd failed. This time. But what about next time? That night after Emma was in bed, Daniel called Victoria. It's over. They're closing the case. Thank God. He could hear her relief through the phone. My lawyers found out what was reported vague allegations of neglect, concerns about single father stability. No specific incidents, no evidence. It was clearly malicious. It was him. The guy from the coffee shop. Almost certainly. I'm having my investigators look into it. If we can prove it was a false report, he can be prosecuted. Daniel leaned back against the couch, exhausted. I should be thanking you. Instead, I just feel angry. You have every right to be angry. Someone tried to weaponize the system against you because you stood up for me. Victoria's voice tightened. This is my fault. No, it is. If you hadn't helped me, he never would have targeted you. And if I hadn't helped you, he would have kept harassing you. I made a choice. I'd make the same one again. Silence on the line. Then Victoria said quietly, Can I come over? Daniel looked at the clock. 9:47 p.m. Emma was asleep. Yeah, he said. Come over. Victoria arrived in 15 minutes. No makeup, hair pulled back, wearing clothes that probably still cost more than his monthly rent, but somehow made her look more human than he'd ever seen her. She stood in his doorway, uncertain for the first time since he'd known her. Hi. Hi. Daniel stepped back to let her in. Emma's asleep. I figured. Victoria moved into the living room, her eyes taking in everything, the secondhand furniture, the photos on the wall, the small kingdom of toys in the corner. You've built something good here. It's not much. It's a home. That's more than I've ever had. Daniel watched her, looking at the photograph of Rachel and Emma. Something in his chest ached. She was beautiful, Victoria said quietly. She was everything. Do you still love her? Every day. Daniel moved to stand beside her. But differently now. Less like a wound and more like a scar. Something that's part of me, but doesn't hurt the same way anymore. Victoria nodded slowly. I need to tell you something, and I need you to let me finish before you respond. Okay. She turned to face him, and Daniel saw something in her expression he hadn't seen before. Vulnerability. Real, unguarded vulnerability. I care about you, she said. More than I intended. More than is probably smart, given how different our lives are. She took a breath. I know we said friends. I know you have Emma to think about, and a life you're trying to keep stable. But I can't keep pretending I don't feel what I feel. You deserve honesty, and I'm tired of performing. Daniel's heart was pounding. Victoria. I'm not asking you to feel the same way. I'm not asking for anything. I just needed you to know. Because you've been honest with me about everything, and I owe you the same. The words hung in the air between them. Daniel thought about all the reasons he should step back. The wealth gap, the lifestyle difference, the risk of letting someone into the carefully protected world he'd built for Emma. But he also thought about the past month, the conversations, the way Victoria had tried to do cartwheels in the park, the look on her face when Emma laughed. I care about you too, he said, and it scares me. Victoria's eyes widened slightly. It scares you. The last time I loved someone, I lost her, and I barely survived it. Daniel's voice roughened. I can't go through that again. I can't put Emma through that again. I'm not asking you to. I know, but that's where my head goes. Every time I start to feel something, all I can think about is how much it's going to hurt when it ends. Victoria was quiet for a moment. Then she reached out and took his hand. What if it doesn't end? Everything ends. Maybe, but that doesn't mean it's not worth starting. Her grip tightened. I'm not asking for promises, Daniel. I'm asking for a chance to see where this goes, to build something real, even if it's scary, even if neither of us knows what we're doing. Daniel looked at their joined hands, at this woman who had everything except the things that actually mattered, who had tracked him down and persisted and cracked herself open in ways that probably terrified her as much as they terrified him. Okay, he said. Okay. We'll try. See where this goes. He met her eyes. But we go slow. And Emma has to be okay with it. She gets a vote. Victoria's smile was brighter than he'd ever seen it. She gets a vote. And if it doesn't work, then we tried. That's more than most people ever do. Daniel pulled her closer. She came willingly, fitting against him like something that had always been meant to be there. I'm terrified, he admitted. So am I. Victoria's voice was muffled against his shoulder. But I think that means it matters. Yeah, Daniel said quietly, holding the first person he'd let this close in 2 years. I think it does. The weeks that followed moved faster than Daniel expected. Victoria started appearing at unexpected moments. Coffee at the workshop on her way to morning meetings. Texts during the day. Photos of terrible corporate art with sarcastic commentary that made Daniel laugh out loud. Showing up at Little Star's pickup with the excuse that she'd been in the neighborhood and thought Emma might want ice cream. Emma, for her part, had decided Victoria was worth keeping. Daddy, when is Victoria coming over again? She was here yesterday, sweetheart. But that was forever ago. It was 18 hours ago. That's basically forever. Daniel couldn't argue with 4-year-old logic, and the truth was, he'd started looking forward to Victoria's appearances too. The way she fit into their routine without trying to change it. The way she asked Emma's opinions about things and actually listened to the answers. The way she looked at him when she thought he wasn't watching. 3 weeks after that night in his living room, Victoria called with tension threading through her voice. I need a favor. It's significant, and you can absolutely say no. Daniel was helping Emma with a puzzle depicting farm animals in increasingly improbable situations. What kind of favor? My family has an annual charity gala this Saturday. It's a command performance for anyone with the Shaw name. I could skip it, but there are business reasons I need to attend. She paused, taking a measured breath. I'd like you to come with me. As my date. The word hung in the air. Date. Crystallizing something they'd both been carefully not naming. Victoria. I know what you're going to say. Too public, too much, too fast. And you're probably right. Her voice carried an edge he hadn't heard before. But my mother called today to inform me that she's arranged for her colleague's son to be my escort. Preston Whitmore, hedge fund manager. Thinks cryptocurrency is a personality trait. Your mother arranged a date for you. Welcome to my family. The bitterness was sharp. I'm 41 years old, and she's still trying to set me up with men she deems appropriate. And I'm so tired of appropriate Daniel. I want to walk into that gala with someone who actually sees me as a person instead of a business opportunity. Daniel rubbed his face. What does this gala involve? 3 hours of pretending to care about people I don't like. Making conversation about portfolios and vacation homes. Enduring scrutiny from my family, who will absolutely judge every aspect of you. She laughed, but it was hollow. I'm really selling this, aren't I? You're being honest. I appreciate that. So is that a no? Daniel glanced at Emma, who was studiously fitting a pig into a space clearly designed for a cow. What about Emma? I already checked with Dave. His wife Maria said she'd watch her for the evening. The fact that Victoria had thought through the logistics before asking said something about how well she'd learned his priorities. It also made saying no significantly harder. These people you're talking about, Daniel said slowly. Your family. They're going to take one look at me and see exactly what I am. A furniture maker who doesn't belong in their world. Good. Let them. Victoria. I'm done pretending that their world is the only one that matters. I'm done letting my mother dictate what's appropriate or acceptable. Her voice was fierce now. I want you there, Daniel. I want to walk in with someone who sees me as Evelyn, instead of as Shaw Development. Daniel was quiet for a long moment. Every instinct screamed this was a mistake. Rich people, charity galas, family politics, none of it was his world. He'd be out of place, uncomfortable, exposed. But Victoria's voice echoed in his head. Someone who actually sees me as a person. He knew what it was like to be seen as a role instead of a person. The widow. The single dad. The guy who left the fire department because he couldn't handle the pressure. If he could help Victoria feel less alone in that crowd, maybe it was worth being uncomfortable. What time do I need to be ready? Daniel. What time? He could hear her smile through the phone. 7. And Daniel. Thank you. After he hung up, Emma looked up from her puzzle. Was that Victoria? Yeah, sweetheart. Are you going on a date with her? Where did you learn about dates? Sophia's big sister talks about them all the time. They're when grown-ups get dressed up and go somewhere fancy and hold hands and stuff. Emma studied him with unsettling perception. Do you like Victoria like that? Like holding hands? Daniel crouched down to her level. I think I might. Does that bother you? Emma considered the question with the gravity of a Supreme Court justice. Does it mean you don't love Mommy anymore? The question punched the air from his lungs. No, baby. It doesn't mean that at all. I will always love Mommy. But she's not here anymore, and I'm still here. And sometimes that means learning to care about other people too. It doesn't replace what I had with Mommy. It's just different. Like how I love Mr. Whiskers and also love my new purple backpack. Exactly like that. Emma nodded, satisfied. Okay, but Daddy, if you're going to a fancy party, you need fancier clothes. You can't wear your work boots. You're absolutely right. Victoria's really pretty. You should look pretty too. Daniel laughed despite himself. I'll do my best. Saturday arrived with November gray and the threat of rain. Daniel spent the day maintaining their routine swimming lesson for Emma, grocery shopping, cleaning the apartment, while his mind churned through everything that could go wrong tonight. Maria arrived at 6:30 with art supplies and the knowing smile of someone who'd watched Daniel resist this moment for years. "You look very handsome," she said, taking in the suit he'd bought with Dave's reluctant fashion advice. "I look uncomfortable." "That too, but handsome uncomfortable." She shooed him toward the door. "Go. Have fun. Try not to punch anyone." "That was one time." "It was my sister's wedding, and you gave your new brother-in-law a black eye." He called Rachel controlling. "Fair enough. Just avoid property damage tonight." Victoria's car arrived at exactly 7. Daniel's first glimpse of her stopped him cold. She wore a floor-length gown the color of deep emerald. Simple cut, elegant lines, somehow making her look like royalty, and entirely unattainable. Her hair was swept up, revealing the curve of her neck. She looked like someone who belonged on magazine covers. She looked like someone who definitely shouldn't be picking up a furniture maker from a rental apartment. "You're staring," Victoria said, but she was smiling. "You're stunning. You clean up pretty well yourself." She took in his suit with obvious appreciation. "Ready to face the lions?" "Not remotely. Let's go anyway." The drive to the gala gave Victoria time to brief him on the people they'd encounter. Her mother, Catherine Shaw, a woman who'd built her identity around her late husband's legacy and her own social standing. Her younger brother, Marcus, who ran the family's original real estate holdings and resented Victoria's greater success. Various cousins and business associates who would view Daniel's presence as either amusing or threatening. "I should warn you," Victoria said as they approached the venue. "My mother is going to try to make you feel small. It's her default setting with anyone she perceives as beneath the family's standards. Don't take it personally." "What if I want to take it personally?" "Then handle it however you see fit. I trust your judgment." The gala was everything Daniel had feared. Crystal chandeliers, ice sculptures, champagne that probably cost more than his monthly rent, people in expensive clothes speaking in careful phrases, assessing each other with surgical precision. Victoria navigated it with practiced ease, introducing Daniel simply as her date, offering no additional context, forcing people to either accept his presence or reveal their own prejudices. Most chose politeness over honesty. The questions about what he did for a living delivered with condescension. The comments about how nice it must be for Victoria to spend time with someone outside her usual circles. Daniel endured it because Victoria stood beside him, her hand occasionally finding his arm in silent support. They'd been there an hour when a woman cut through the crowd toward them. She moved with purpose, wearing her wealth like armor and her disapproval like a weapon. "Evelyn," Catherine Shaw's voice was cultured and cold. "I see you've brought a guest. How unexpected." "Mother, this is Daniel Cole. Daniel, my mother, Catherine Shaw." Daniel extended his hand. Catherine accepted it with fractional hesitation. "Mrs. Shaw, thank you for having me. I wasn't aware I had a choice in the matter." She turned to Victoria. "Preston is here. He's been asking about you." "How unfortunate for Preston." "Evelyn, don't be difficult. Preston is a suitable match. Well-educated, excellent family, significant portfolio." "I'm not a corporate merger, Mother. I don't require a suitable match." Catherine's expression tightened. She looked at Daniel with undisguised assessment. "What is it you do, Mr. Cole?" "I build furniture." "How rustic." The word dripped with contempt. "And how did you meet my daughter?" "I helped her when someone was harassing her in a coffee shop." "Ah, you're that one." Catherine's tone suggested she'd heard the story and dismissed it. "How very gallant of you. And now you're dating her. How convenient." Daniel felt Victoria tense beside him. The implication was clear that he'd helped her with the calculated intention of leveraging it into access to her wealth. "Mrs. Shaw." Daniel kept his voice level. Conversational. "I understand why you might think that. You've probably spent your life around people who see your family name as an opportunity. But I'm going to be clear about something. Catherine's eyebrow rose. People probably didn't challenge her often. I'm not interested in your daughter's money. I'm not interested in her connections or her business or any of the things you probably think make her valuable. Daniel held her gaze. I'm interested in Victoria, the person who does cartwheels in the park with my daughter, even though she's terrible at them. The person who shows up at my workshop with coffee for no reason. The person who's trying to figure out how to be herself instead of just her title. He paused. That's who I see when I look at her. If that's not valuable enough for you, that says more about your priorities than mine. The silence that followed was absolute. Catherine stared at him like he'd grown a second head. Victoria's hand found his squeezing hard enough to hurt. Well, Catherine said, finally, ice crystallizing in her voice. How very articulate. Evelyn, we need to discuss the Foundation Board nominations. Excuse us, Mr. Cole. She turned and walked away, clearly expecting Victoria to follow. Victoria didn't move. I should go talk to her, Victoria said quietly. Damage control. You don't have to. I know. But if I don't, she'll make this evening miserable for everyone. She leaned in and kissed his cheek, quick, almost defiant. A public claim. I'll be back in 10 minutes. Don't let anyone intimidate you. Wouldn't dream of it. Daniel watched her navigate through the crowd, then made his way toward the bar. He needed something stronger than champagne. He was waiting for his bourbon when a man about his age approached. Similar build expensive suit expression that suggested he found the whole situation amusing. That was spectacular. The man ordered a scotch. Catherine Shaw doesn't get challenged often. I think you might have actually rattled her. Wasn't my intention. Makes it better. He extended his hand. Marcus Shaw, Victoria's brother. Daniel shook it warily. Daniel Cole. I know. You're all Mother's been talking about for the past week. The furniture maker who's corrupting her daughter. Marcus grinned. I like you already. You don't know me. No, but I know my sister. And I've never seen her bring anyone to one of these events. Ever. She must really like you. The feeling's mutual. Good. Because Victoria deserves someone who sees her as more than a trophy or a business opportunity. Marcus's expression sobered. She spent her whole life trying to prove she was more than our father's legacy. Built an empire that makes his holdings look like a lemonade stand, and our mother still treats her like a disappointment. Why are you telling me this? Because if you hurt her, I'll make your life extremely unpleasant. I have resources and a vindictive streak. Marcus smiled. But if you're genuine, if you actually care about her, then you have my support. For whatever that's worth. Daniel studied him, seeing something familiar in the protective stance. You love your sister. She's the only member of this family worth a damn, including me. Marcus raised his glass. To people who see past the packaging. Victoria returned 20 minutes later, her expression carefully neutral in a way that told Daniel the conversation with her mother had been exactly as awful as expected. Dance with me, she said, linking her arm through his. I'm not a good dancer. Neither am I. We'll be terrible together. They moved on to the dance floor. Daniel's hand found her waist, the other holding hers carefully. My mother suggested I was throwing my life away on someone unsuitable, Victoria said quietly. I told her that her opinion on my personal life stopped mattering when I turned 18. How'd that go? She threatened to make things difficult for Shaw Development. I reminded her she sits on the board but has no actual authority, and if she tried to interfere out of personal spite, I'd have her removed for breach of fiduciary duty. You fought with your mother over me. I fought with my mother over her trying to control my life. You were just the catalyst. Victoria met his eyes. Victoria met his. I meant what I said, Daniel. I'm done letting other people dictate what's acceptable. I want to build something real with you. If you want that too. Daniel pulled her closer. I want that. But I need you to understand I come with complications. A daughter who will always be my first priority. A past that still wakes me up some nights. A life that's never going to include galas and society events. I'm not asking you to change your life. I'm asking to be part of it. That's the same thing. No, it's not. Victoria's voice was fierce. Changing your life would mean forcing you to fit into my world. Being part of it means I fit into yours. I learn about furniture schedules and preschool pickup times. You don't become someone else. You just let me stand beside you. Daniel thought about that. About Victoria showing up at his workshop with coffee. About her sitting on his floor building block towers with Emma. About the way she'd folded herself into his routine without demanding he reshape it. My mother died when I was 12, he said, surprising himself. My father raised me and my sister on a firefighter's salary. He taught us that worth came from what you contributed, not what you accumulated. He would have liked you. Yeah, he had a saying, judge people by their character when they have nothing to gain. You passed that test the first day we met. So did you. They danced through 2 more songs, oblivious to the crowd, to Catherine's disapproving glare, to Marcus's knowing smile from the bar. Then Daniel's phone vibrated in his pocket. 2 short bursts. Emergency. He pulled it out. Maria's name. Maria, what's wrong? Daniel, don't panic, but Emma had a fall. We're at Seattle General. She's okay, but they want to run some tests. They need parental consent. How fast can you get here? The world narrowed to a single point. 20 minutes. I'm leaving now. He hung up and turned to Victoria, but she'd already read his face. Emma's in the hospital. I have to go. I'll drive. My car's faster. They made it to the valet in 3 minutes. Victoria drove with aggressive precision, weaving through traffic, while Daniel called Maria for details. Emma had been playing on the couch, attempting some kind of acrobatic maneuver with Mr. Whiskers. She'd slipped and hit her head on the coffee table. Conscious the whole time, crying but alert, but Maria had taken her to the ER out of caution. The doctors wanted a CT scan to rule out concussion. By the time they reached the hospital, Daniel was wound tight enough to shatter. Maria met them outside the exam room. I'm so sorry, Daniel. She was right there. And then she just... It's okay. Accidents happen. Where is she? Room 3. The doctor's with her. Daniel pushed through the door. Emma sat on an exam table, holding an ice pack to her forehead, looking small and scared. Her face lit up when she saw him. Daddy! He was across the room in 3 strides, pulling her into his arms, checking her injury automatically. Goose egg above her left eye. Swelling, but no active bleeding. Pupils equal and reactive. Hey, sweetheart, I hear you've been doing gymnastics on the furniture. I was being a superhero, but I fell. Superheroes fall sometimes. That's okay. He pulled back to look at her. How do you feel? My head hurts, and everything's too bright. Classic concussion symptoms. Daniel kept his voice calm. The doctors are going to take some pictures of your head to make sure everything's okay inside. Like an X-ray, but fancier. Will it hurt? Not even a little bit. The doctor appeared, young womankind eyes, calm voice. She explained the CT scan procedure while Daniel signed consent forms with hands that wanted to shake. Victoria stood in the doorway, not intruding, just present. You came too, Emma said, noticing her. Of course I did. Victoria moved closer. I wanted to make sure you were okay. You look like a princess. Are you and Daddy at a ball like in Cinderella? Victoria glanced down at her gown, now rumpled after an hour in an emergency room. We were, but this is much more important. Is Daddy your prince? Something shifted in Victoria's expression. Something like that. Emma considered this, then nodded with the gravity of someone making an important decision. Good. Daddy needs someone to make sure he's not lonely when I grow up. Daniel's throat tightened. You're 4, sweetheart. You're not growing up for a while. But I will eventually. Sophia's sister is in high school and she barely talks to her dad anymore. We'll cross that bridge when we get there. Right now, let's get your head checked. They wheeled Emma away for the CT scan. Daniel paced the small waiting area while Victoria sat with the patience of someone who understood that some anxieties couldn't be soothed with words. 45 minutes later, the doctor returned with a smile. No fractures, no bleeding, no significant trauma. Mild concussion. We need to monitor her for 24 hours, but she can go home tonight. The relief nearly dropped Daniel to his knees. He sat down hard in a plastic chair. Victoria's hand found his shoulder. She's going to be fine. I know. His voice came out rough. I know. It's just... You thought you might lose her. For about 30 seconds in that car, it was the only thing I could think about. Daniel looked up at her. If something happened to her. It didn't. She's okay. You're okay. I don't feel okay. I feel like I'm one crisis away from falling apart. Victoria crouched down in front of him, taking both his hands. Daniel, look at me. He did. You are the most solid person I've ever met. You've survived things that would have broken most people, and you're still here, still standing, still being an amazing father to that little girl. Her eyes were steady. You're not falling apart. You're just scared. There's a difference. Is there? Yes. Falling apart means you can't function. Being scared means you care so much it hurts. She squeezed his hands. That's not weakness. That's love. Daniel stared at her. At this woman who'd come to a hospital in a ball gown, who'd sat for an hour without complaining, who was now kneeling on a dirty floor, telling him he wasn't weak. I love you, he said. The words came out before he could stop them. Raw, unplanned, true. Victoria's eyes widened. Daniel. I know it's fast. I know we said we'd take things slow. But sitting in that car thinking about Emma, all I could think was that I wanted you there. Not because you could fix anything, but because having you there made it less terrifying. He took a shaky breath. I love you, Victoria. And it scares me more than any fire I ever walked into. For a long moment, she didn't respond. Then she leaned forward and kissed him. Not gentle, not tentative. The kind of kiss that said everything words couldn't. I love you too, she whispered against his mouth. I have for weeks. I was just afraid to say it. Afraid of what? That you'd run. That it would be too much, too fast. She pulled back, tears tracking down her cheeks. I've never had this before. Someone who sees me as just me. Someone who doesn't want anything except to be with me. I want everything with you. Then you have it. Whatever we're building, wherever this goes, I'm in. All the way. Daniel pulled her into his arms and held on. In a hospital waiting room, still wearing formal clothes, both of them running on adrenaline and fear. And something that felt suspiciously like hope. The discharge nurse found them like that 20 minutes later. Emma was ready to go home. She bounced out of the exam room with the resilience of childhood, apparently unfazed by her adventure. Daddy, they gave me a sticker. It has a dinosaur on it, and the machine made funny noises, but it didn't hurt at all. That's great, sweetheart. Ready to go home. Yes, Mr. Whiskers is probably worried. Can Victoria come too? Daniel looked at Victoria. She looked back. I'd like that, Victoria said. If it's okay with your daddy. It's okay with me. The drive home was quiet. Emma dozed in the back seat despite Daniel's periodic checks. Victoria drove with the same focused precision as before, but something had shifted between them. The walls were down. The pretense was gone. At the apartment, Daniel carried Emma inside and put her to bed. Mr. Whiskers was returned to his place of honor. The dinosaur sticker was applied to the headboard. Stay, Emma murmured as Daniel tucked her in. Both of you, please. Daniel looked at Victoria, who stood in the doorway in her rumpled emerald gown. We'll be right here, Daniel said. Promise. Emma was asleep in seconds. Daniel and Victoria retreated to the living room. She kicked off her heels and curled up on his second-hand couch like she belonged there. "Some first date," she said. "We've had worse. Have we, Chul? The coffee shop, the grocery store stalking, the social worker." Daniel sat down beside her, although I guess those weren't technically dates. They felt like something. They felt like you refusing to take no for an answer. I prefer persistent. Victoria leaned against his shoulder. "Daniel. Yeah. I meant what I said. I love you. And I know this is complicated. Our lives, our backgrounds, everything. But I don't want to go back to how things were before. I don't want to pretend I don't feel this." Daniel wrapped an arm around her. "Neither do I. So what happens now? Now we go slow. We figure things out. We make sure Emma's okay with it." He pressed a kiss to her hair. "We stop pretending we're just friends. I can do that. And Victoria? Thank you for tonight, for being here, for not running when things got scary." She tilted her head up to look at him. "I told you, I'm in, all the way." Even if all the way means sitting in emergency rooms and dealing with preschool drama and attending exactly 0 charity galas ever again. Especially then, she smiled. "Although we might have to do 1 gala a year. Tax purposes. I'll survive. You'll more than survive. You'll wear that suit and tell off my mother and make every man in the room jealous." Is that what happened tonight? That's exactly what happened tonight. Victoria's eyes were soft. "You were magnificent. Completely out of your element, surrounded by sharks, and you still stood your ground. For me. That's what you do for people you love. Most people don't. That's what makes you different." Daniel thought about everything that had happened since that morning in the coffee shop. The confrontation, the pursuit, the slow, careful building of something real. Tonight's chaos and terror and confession. And somehow through all of it Victoria had stayed. Had shown up, had chosen him not despite his complications, but alongside them. "I'm glad you're stubborn," he said. "I'm glad you eventually stopped running. I'm glad Emma likes you. I'm glad Mr. Whiskers approves." Daniel laughed, and the sound released something that had been knotted in his chest since the phone call. Since long before the phone call, if he was honest. Since Rachel. Since the day he'd stopped believing good things could happen to him. But Victoria was here. Emma was safe. And for the first time in 2 years, Daniel let himself imagine a future that included more than just surviving. "Stay tonight," he said. "Not, I mean the couch. Or I can take the couch. I'll stay." Victoria cut off his awkward fumbling. "I'll take the couch. And tomorrow we can figure out what comes next." "Tomorrow," Daniel agreed. He found her a t-shirt and blanket. Made sure the coffee maker was set for morning. Checked on Emma one more time, still sleeping, still safe, dinosaur sticker gleaming in the nightlight. When he finally lay down in his own bed, exhaustion hit like a wave. But underneath it was something else. Something warm and unfamiliar. Hope. Terrifying, wonderful hope. And in the living room, curled up on a second-hand couch in a borrowed t-shirt, Victoria Shaw, billionaire, CEO, Forbes-listed power broker, fell asleep with a smile on her face, dreaming of block towers and chocolate chip pancakes and a future she'd never known she wanted until a furniture maker stepped between her and a bully in a coffee shop. The morning after the gala, Daniel woke to the smell of coffee and the sound of his daughter's laughter. He lay still for a moment, disoriented. The laughter was normal. Emma laughed most mornings, usually at something Mr. Whiskers had allegedly said, but the coffee smell was different, richer, not from his ancient machine. Then he remembered, Victoria, the hospital, the confession. He got up and walked to the kitchen. Victoria stood at the stove in his old Seattle Fire Department t-shirt, hair loose and tangled, attempting to flip a pancake. Emma sat at the table in her pajamas, providing commentary. "You have to wait until the bubbles pop." Emma said with the authority of someone who had watched her father do this 1,000 times. Daddy says that's how you know. The bubbles popped 3 minutes ago. I think I waited too long. It's okay. Daddy burns them sometimes too. I do not burn them sometimes, Daniel said from the doorway. Both of them turned. Emma's face lit up. Daddy, Victoria's making pancakes, but she's not very good at it. I'm hearing that. Daniel moved into the kitchen, his eyes finding Victoria's. She looked uncertain, vulnerable in a way he rarely saw. You stayed. You asked me to. I meant it. Good. She smiled, and something in Daniel's chest eased. Because I definitely burned these pancakes, and I need someone to eat them so Emma doesn't have to suffer alone. Breakfast was chaos. The pancakes were indeed burned on one side, but Emma declared them special and ate 3. Victoria learned that there was a specific way the syrup had to be poured in a spiral pattern, never straight, and that Mr. Whiskers required his own place setting even though he didn't eat. Daniel watched them together. His daughter and this woman who 3 months ago had been a stranger in a coffee shop. Now Victoria was sitting at his kitchen table wearing his shirt, arguing with a 4-year-old about whether bunnies preferred honey or maple syrup. Daddy, Victoria says bunnies like honey better, but Mr. Whiskers told me he likes maple syrup. Who's right? I think Mr. Whiskers knows his own preferences. Ha! Emma pointed at Victoria triumphantly. Maple syrup. I stand corrected. Victoria raised her hands in surrender. Mr. Whiskers is the authority. After breakfast, Victoria insisted on helping clean up despite Daniel's protests that she should rest. They stood side by side at the sink, washing dishes like it was something they'd done 100 times before. I should go, Victoria said quietly. Let you two have your day. And I should probably change out of last night's dress at some point. Or you could stay. Victoria paused, a soapy plate in her hands. Daniel. I'm serious. Emma has swimming lessons this afternoon, then we were going to hit the park. You could come, if you want. In a ball gown. I might have some sweatpants that fit you, approximately. Victoria laughed. The CEO of Shaw Development in borrowed sweatpants at a public park. My mother would have an aneurysm. Is that a no? She set down the plate and turned to face him, suds still on her fingers. It's a yes. It's absolutely a yes. The sweatpants were too long, and the hoodie swallowed her, but Victoria wore them to Emma's swimming lesson without complaint. She sat in the bleachers next to Daniel, watching Emma paddle enthusiastically, if not skillfully, and something about the ordinariness of it made Daniel's chest tight. This is nice, Victoria said, sitting on uncomfortable plastic seats watching a 4-year-old try not to drown. Being normal, doing regular things that regular people do. She leaned against his shoulder. I've never really had this. What do you mean? My childhood was structured. Lessons, appearances, expectations. Even my free time had an agenda, and my adult life has been the same. Meetings, galas, strategic social engagements. She watched Emma splash her instructor. I've never just sat and watched someone I care about do something ordinary. Daniel took her hand. Get used to it. We're very boring people. I love boring. Boring is wonderful. After swimming, they went to the park. Emma ran ahead to the swings while Daniel and Victoria followed at a slower pace, hands still linked. I've been thinking, Victoria said, about work, about my life. Thinking what? That I don't want to do it anymore. Not the way I've been doing it. Daniel stopped walking. What does that mean? I built Shaw Development to prove something. To my father, to my mother, to everyone who said I couldn't. Victoria's voice was steady, but there was something underneath it. Resolution. Decision. But I proved it a long time ago. Now I'm just maintaining. Running an empire because I built it, not because it fulfills me. What would fulfill you? This. She gestured at the park. At Emma on the swings, at their joined hands. Being present, having time for things that aren't strategic or profitable, being Evelyn instead of Shaw Development. So what are you going to do? I'm restructuring, promoting my COO to CEO, stepping back to board chair, still involved, still influential, but not consumed by it every waking moment. She met his eyes. I want time to figure out what kind of life I actually want, and I want to figure it out with you. Daniel stared at her. Victoria, you're talking about changing your entire life. I'm talking about choosing my life, for the first time ever. Her grip on his hand tightened. Is that okay with you? Is it okay with me that you want to spend more time with me and Emma? That you want to stop working 80-hour weeks? That you want to do normal things like watch swimming lessons and go to parks? Yes. Let me think about it. Daniel pulled her closer. Okay, I've thought about it. Yes, it's okay with me. Victoria laughed that real laugh that transformed her face and kissed him in the middle of the park in borrowed sweatpants while Emma shouted encouragement from the swings. Daddy and Victoria are kissing. That means they're in love. Mr. Whiskers says congratulations. The weeks that followed moved with strange momentum, everything shifting faster than Daniel had thought possible. Victoria announced her restructuring at a board meeting that, according to Marcus, caused 3 executives to spill their coffee and 1 to actually faint. The business press went crazy speculation about health problems, personal crises, hostile takeover attempts. Victoria ignored all of it. Let them speculate, she said when Daniel asked if the coverage bothered her. By the time they figure out the truth, I'll be too happy to care. She started spending more time at Daniel's apartment. First 1 night a week, then 2, then most nights. She learned Emma's routine, which books were required for bedtime, which snacks were acceptable, the precise method for brushing tangled hair without causing tears. And Emma, for her part, bloomed. Daddy, can Victoria do my hair today? Daddy, Victoria showed me how to make a blanket fort, a professional one. Daddy, Mr. Whiskers says Victoria should live here all the time. He says she's family now. Daniel watched his daughter open up in ways she hadn't since Rachel died. Victoria wasn't trying to replace Rachel. She never pretended to be Emma's mother, never overstepped, never pushed. She simply showed up day after day, patient and present and real. But it was the night 2 months after the gala that changed everything. Emma had been asleep for an hour. Daniel and Victoria sat on the couch, her feet in his lap, television playing something neither of them was watching. Dave offered me a promotion, Daniel said. Project manager for the Morrison Commercial Development. Better pay, more responsibility, longer hours. What did you tell him? That I needed to think about it. Victoria sat up, turning to face him. You should take it. It would mean less time with Emma, less flexibility. It would also mean more money, more security, a real career instead of just getting by. She took his hand. Daniel, you've been playing it safe since Rachel died, and I understand why, but Emma's older now, she's in school, and you're good at what you do. You should let yourself succeed. I'm not playing it safe, I'm being responsible. You're hiding. There's a difference. Her voice was gentle but firm. You're so afraid of wanting more that you've convinced yourself wanting less is noble. It's not. It's just fear wearing a responsible costume. Daniel wanted to argue, wanted to defend the choices he'd made, the life he'd built. But somewhere deep down, he knew she was right. What if I take it and everything falls apart? Then we figure it out together. That's what partners do. Partners. Victoria's expression shifted. Something vulnerable and hopeful. Is that what we are? I don't know. What do you want us to be? I want. She stopped, took a breath. I want to stop going back and forth between my penthouse and your apartment. I want to stop pretending we're taking things slow when we're clearly not. I want to be here, really here every day. You want to move in. I want to build a life with you. A real one, not visits and sleepovers and stolen moments, an actual life. Daniel's heart hammered in his chest. Victoria, that's a big step. I know. Emma would have to be okay with it. Of course. And we'd need more space. This apartment is barely big enough for 2 people, let alone 3. I have resources. We could find something. I'm not living in a penthouse. I don't want a penthouse. I want a home. Victoria's eyes were bright. I want a kitchen where Emma can make a mess with pancake batter. I want a backyard where she can run around. I want a neighborhood with other kids and parks and normal things. That's not the world you come from. No, it's the world I'm choosing. She squeezed his hand. If you'll have me. Daniel looked at her. At this woman who had started as a stranger in a coffee shop, who had tracked him down, who had fought through his walls and his fear and his grief to find something real underneath. I'll have you, he said. But we ask Emma first. She gets a vote. She gets a vote. They asked Emma the next morning at breakfast. Victoria made pancakes she'd gotten better, only slightly burned now, and Daniel tried to figure out how to explain to a 4-year-old that their family might be changing. Emma beat him to it. Daddy, when is Victoria going to live here for real? Daniel blinked. What do you mean, sweetheart? She sleeps here a lot, but then she goes to her other house. Sophie from school says that's what happens before grown-ups move in together. Emma stabbed a piece of pancake with her fork. Mr. Whiskers thinks Victoria should just stay. Victoria caught Daniel's eye across the table. He shrugged. The universe had apparently decided to handle this for them. Would you be okay with that? Victoria asked carefully. If I lived here all the time? Emma considered this with characteristic gravity. Would you make pancakes every morning? I could try. Would you read me stories at bedtime? If you wanted me to? Would you help Daddy not be so sad when he thinks about Mommy? Daniel's throat tightened. Victoria's eyes glistened. I would do my best, Victoria said quietly. But sweetie, I wouldn't be trying to replace your mommy. No one could ever do that. I would just be Victoria, someone who loves you and your daddy and wants to be part of your family. Daddy still loves Mommy, right? Forever, Daniel said. That never changes. But he can love Victoria too. Yes, different kinds of love, both real. Emma processed this with the focused intensity she brought to all important decisions. Mr. Whiskers was consulted. The remaining pancake was examined for answers. Finally, she nodded. Okay, Victoria can live with us, but she has to learn to make pancakes better, and she can't take my room. Victoria laughed through tears. I promise. Better pancakes and your room stays yours. Deal. Emma extended her small hand. Victoria shook it solemnly. Daniel watched them, his daughter, and the woman he loved, making a pact over burned pancakes, and felt something shift in his chest. Not the lifting of grief that never fully lifted, but the settling of something new alongside it. Hope. Possibility. Future. They found a house in March. Not a penthouse, not a mansion. A solid craftsman in a good school district with a backyard big enough for Emma's increasingly elaborate adventures and a workshop where Daniel could build furniture on weekends. Victoria sold her penthouse without hesitation. Daniel gave notice on the apartment that had sheltered him through his darkest years. Moving day was chaos. Emma insisted on personally supervising the relocation of every single toy. Victoria discovered she'd accumulated an absurd amount of corporate gift baskets she'd never opened. Daniel's furniture looked different in a real house, more substantial, more permanent. Dave and Maria came to help, bringing sandwiches and their own chaos. Marcus showed up unexpectedly with a housewarming gift, a truly hideous abstract painting that he insisted would add character. It looks like someone spilled wine on a cat, Daniel said. It cost $40,000. It still looks like someone spilled wine on a cat. That's what makes it art. By evening, the basics were unpacked. Emma had claimed her room, the one with the window facing the old oak tree in the backyard, and declared it perfect. Victoria had organized the kitchen with frightening efficiency. Daniel had set up their bed, the first bed they'd share in a house that was theirs. "We did it," Victoria said, leaning against him in their new living room. Boxes everywhere, furniture in wrong places, everything a mess. "We actually did it." "Did you think we wouldn't?" "I thought I might wake up and discover I'd imagined the whole thing." She wrapped her arms around his waist. Billionaire CEO falls in love with furniture maker. Gives up penthouse for craftsman house in the suburbs. Learns to make pancakes badly. It sounds like a fever dream. Better than reality TV? Much better. She tilted her head up. "Kiss me." He did. Long and slow, the kind of kiss that said home, and finally, and always. "Daddy, Victoria, Mr. Whiskers wants to see the backyard." They broke apart laughing. "Duty calls," Daniel said. "Always." Victoria took his hand. "Let's go show Mr. Whiskers his new kingdom." The backyard exploration lasted until dark. Emma declared the oak tree perfect for a future treehouse. "When I'm bigger, Daddy, you can build it, you build everything." And Mr. Whiskers approved of the flower beds Victoria planned to plant. After Emma was in bed exhausted from the excitement, Daniel and Victoria sat on their back porch. Their porch, in their house, watching stars emerge above their yard. "I talked to my mother today," Victoria said. "How'd that go?" "She's still not speaking to me, but she sent a passive-aggressive congratulations card through Marcus." Victoria laughed. It said, "Best wishes on your new home." She underlined "new" 3 times. What does that mean? It means she thinks I've downgraded my life and she wants me to know she disapproves. Victoria leaned her head on Daniel's shoulder. She doesn't understand that this is an upgrade, that having less space but more love is actually having more. She might come around eventually. Maybe, or maybe not. Either way, I'm done letting her approval determine my happiness. They sat in comfortable silence. Daniel thought about everything that had led to this moment. A random encounter in a coffee shop. A man who wouldn't take no for an answer. A decision to step between a stranger and trouble. If he'd looked away that morning. If he'd decided it wasn't his business. If he'd protected his careful routine instead of acting on instinct. "I almost didn't help you," he said. Victoria lifted her head. "What?" "That morning, in Harbor Coffee. I saw what was happening, and for a second, just a second, I thought about walking away. About not getting involved. About keeping my head down and my life simple." "But you didn't." "No, I didn't." Daniel met her eyes. "And now, here we are." "Here we are." Victoria touched his face. "Why didn't you walk away, I mean?" Daniel thought about it. About the years of firefighting. About Rachel. About Emma. About all the moments that had shaped him into someone who moved toward trouble instead of away from it. "Because that's not who I am," he said finally. "I spent a long time after Rachel died trying to be someone small, someone invisible, someone who didn't engage with the world because engaging meant risking pain." He took a breath. "But you can't live that way. Not really. You can exist, but you can't live. So you helped a stranger." "I helped a stranger, and she turned out to be a stubborn billionaire who wouldn't leave me alone." Victoria laughed. "Best decision you ever made." "Second best." "What was the first?" "Saying yes when you asked if you could stay." The spring passed in a rhythm of domestic contentment that Daniel had stopped believing was possible for him. He took the project manager position. The hours were longer, but Victoria was there to share the load, picking up Emma from school, handling the small crises that arose, being present in ways that made everything more manageable. Emma thrived. She'd adjusted to the new house with the resilience of childhood, decorating her room with artwork and declaring the oak tree her official thinking spot. She called Victoria by her name, never Mom, which they'd agreed was Rachel's title alone, but the relationship had deepened into something that didn't need a label. "Daddy, Victoria, help me with my reading today. She does the voices different than you do." Better or worse? Just different. She makes the witch sound scary. You make her sound like she has a cold. I'll work on my witch voice. It's okay. I like both ways. Both ways. The phrase stuck with Daniel. He'd spent 2 years believing there was only one way, one path, one love, one chance at happiness. Victoria had proven him wrong without trying to. She hadn't replaced what he had with Rachel. She'd added something new, something that existed alongside the grief, instead of erasing it. One evening in late May, Daniel came home to find Victoria and Emma in the backyard, attempting to pitch a tent for a camping adventure that would involve sleeping outdoors for approximately 30 minutes before Emma demanded to go inside. "It's supposed to have poles," Victoria said, wrestling with fabric. "It does have poles, somewhere." "I found them." Emma held up 2 metal rods triumphantly. "They were in the box." "Of course they were in the box." Victoria accepted them with exaggerated relief. "I've built a billion-dollar company, but tents defeat me." "That's okay," Emma said seriously. "Everyone has things they're not good at. Daddy can't cook pasta without burning it." "That was one time," Daniel called from the porch. "It was 3 times, Daddy. I counted." Victoria looked up at him, hair escaping from her ponytail, face smudged with dirt, wearing a t-shirt that said "World's Okayest Camper" that Emma had picked out. She looked nothing like the composed CEO he'd met in that coffee shop. She looked like someone he wanted to spend the rest of his life with. The thought hit him with sudden, unexpected force. Not the first time he'd thought it, not even the 10th, but this time it came with clarity, certainty. He wanted to marry her. After the tent was pitched, and Emma had made it approximately 45 minutes before declaring the ground too grassy and demanding her real bed, Daniel tucked his daughter in while Victoria cleaned up the camping supplies. "Daddy." "Yeah, sweetheart. Do you think you're going to marry Victoria?" Daniel went still. "What makes you ask that?" "Sophie's mom got married again last year. She says it's called a blended family, like a smoothie but with people." "That's one way to put it. Would Victoria be my stepmom, like in the fairy tales? Those fairy tales don't get stepmoms right. In real life, stepmoms can be wonderful." Emma considered this. If you married Victoria, would she still be Victoria? She'd always be Victoria. That wouldn't change. And you'd still love Mommy. Forever and always. Okay. Emma snuggled deeper into her covers. "I think you should marry her, Daddy. She makes you happy. You're less tired now." "Am I?" "You used to have sad eyes even when you smiled. Now your eyes smile too." Emma yawned. "Mr. Whiskers noticed. He's very observant." Daniel leaned down and kissed her forehead. "I'll take that under advisement." "What does advisement mean?" "It means I'll think about it." "Don't think too long. Victoria might get tired of waiting." Daniel laughed despite himself. "When did you get so wise?" "I've always been wise, Daddy. You just didn't notice." He found Victoria in the living room shoes, off scrolling through her phone with the distracted focus of someone decompressing. Emma asleep. Out like a light. Camping is exhausting, apparently. It is when you're 4. Victoria set down her phone. "She's amazing, Daniel. Every day I'm more in awe of who she's becoming. She gets it from her mother. She gets it from both her parents, the original 2 and the bonus one." Victoria patted the couch beside her. "Come sit. You look like you have something on your mind." Daniel sat, took her hand, tried to find the words for what he was feeling. "I've been thinking," he said, about how different my life is now compared to a year ago, about how I never expected any of this, about how grateful I am that you didn't take no for an answer." "I rarely do." Victoria smiled. "But there's something else, I can tell." Daniel took a breath. "I love you." "I love you too. And I want—" He stopped, started again. "I know we've only been doing this for a few months. I know there are probably rules about timing and appropriateness and not rushing things, but I can't stop thinking about... Yes. Daniel blinked. I haven't asked anything yet. You're going to ask me to marry you. I can see it in your face. And the answer is yes. Victoria's eyes were bright, her grip on his hand tight. Yes, Daniel Cole. Yes, I'll marry you. Yes, I want to spend the rest of my life with you and Emma. Yes to everything. You don't want a ring, a romantic proposal, something more traditional. I want you. That's all I've wanted since the day you stepped between me and that man in the coffee shop. She laughed, tears tracking down her cheeks. Besides, if you wait for the perfect romantic moment, I might explode from anticipation. Daniel kissed her, long and deep and full of everything he couldn't find words for. I'm still getting you a ring, he said when they broke apart. I'd expect nothing less. And I'm still doing a proper proposal for Emma. She should be there. She should. She's family. So are you. Daniel pressed his forehead to hers. You've been family since the moment you refused to let me push you away. I told you. I'm stubborn. Best quality you have. I thought you liked my pancakes. Those are still terrible. Victoria laughed, and the sound filled their house. Their home with exactly the kind of joy Daniel had stopped believing he deserved. He called Dave that night after Victoria had gone to bed. It's late, Dave said. Someone better be dead or engaged. Engaged? Silence. Then, for real. For real. Daniel Cole. The man who swore he'd never open himself up again. The man who turned down every woman Maria tried to set him up with. The man who, are you going to congratulate me or give me a hard time? Both, at length. This weekend. You're coming to dinner, and you're bringing Victoria and Emma, and we're celebrating properly. Dave's voice softened. I'm proud of you, Danny. Rachel would be too. The mention of Rachel didn't hurt the way it used to. It settled into Daniel's chest like a warm weight, bittersweet, but not sharp. I think she would, Daniel said. I think she'd like Victoria. She'd like that you're happy. That's all she ever wanted for you. Daniel hung up and stood in the dark living room of the house he'd built with his new family. Photos on the walls. Rachel and baby Emma. Emma at various ages. Daniel and Victoria at the park. All of them together at Emma's birthday party. Past and present. Grief and joy. Loss and love. All of it real. All of it his. He went to bed and curled around Victoria, and for the first time in 3 years, Daniel Cole fell asleep without the familiar weight of loneliness pressing against his chest. He'd finally let someone in, and it had been worth every terrifying moment. The proposal happened on a Saturday morning in October, 1 year, almost to the day, since Daniel had stepped between Victoria and a stranger in Harbor Coffee. He'd planned something elaborate, a fancy restaurant downtown, maybe a carriage ride through the park. The kind of romantic gesture that seemed appropriate for someone like Victoria, billionaire CEO woman who'd had everything except the things that mattered. But when the morning arrived, and Daniel saw her in the kitchen barefoot wearing his old Seattle Fire Department t-shirt, making pancakes while Emma supervised chocolate chip distribution, he realized that elaborate wasn't what either of them needed. This was perfect. This ordinary morning in their home with their daughter. This was the life they'd built together. You're putting too many on one side, Emma said, standing on her step stool to monitor the batter. It has to be even or the pancake tastes weird. Pancakes can't taste uneven. Yes, they can. Daddy told me. Did Daddy also tell you that you're very bossy for someone who's 4, almost 5? My birthday is in 3 weeks. Almost 5. My mistake. Daniel watched them from the kitchen doorway, the ring box heavy in his pocket. He'd picked it out 2 weeks ago, simple gold band, modest diamond, nothing ostentatious. Victoria had made clear she didn't want flash. She wanted real. His heart was pounding so hard he was surprised they couldn't hear it. Victoria. She turned, spatula in hand, batter smudged on her cheek. "Hey, you're up. Want coffee?" "Emma and I have been—" Daniel dropped to one knee. Victoria's words stopped mid-sentence. Emma's eyes went wide as saucers. "You already asked me," Victoria said, her voice catching. "I already said yes." That was a conversation. "This is official." Daniel pulled out the ring box and opened it. The diamond caught the morning light. "Victoria Shaw, a year ago you walked into my life when I wasn't looking for anyone. You stayed when I tried to push you away. You loved my daughter before you loved me. You gave up everything you thought you wanted for everything that actually matters." His voice roughened. "I spent 3 years convinced I'd never feel anything again, that the best parts of my life were over, that all I could do was survive until surviving was enough." He looked up at her, at this woman who had crashed through his walls with stubborn persistence and relentless hope. "You proved me wrong. You showed me that loving again isn't betraying what I had. It's honoring it by being brave enough to try." He took a breath. "So I'm asking you properly, in front of Emma, in our kitchen, in the life we've built together, will you marry me?" Victoria was crying, laughing, both at once. "Yes." She dropped to her knees in front of him, taking his face in her hands. "Yes, Daniel Cole. Yes, forever. Yes to everything." He slid the ring onto her finger. It fit perfectly. Finally, Emma threw her hands in the air, nearly toppling off the step stool. "Mr. Whiskers says it's about time." Daniel laughed, pulling both of them into his arms, his daughter and his fiancée, while burned pancake smoke started rising from the stove, and the morning sun streamed through the windows of their home. "The pancakes," Victoria said against his shoulder. "Let them burn. They're going to set off the smoke alarm. Worth it." The smoke alarm went off 30 seconds later. Emma declared it the best proposal ever and demanded they celebrate by getting donuts instead of eating burned pancakes. Victoria agreed, still crying, still laughing, still wearing Daniel's t-shirt, and holding her hand up to watch the ring catch the light. They drove to the donut shop, in the same truck Daniel had been driving the day they met. Emma sat in the back with Mr. Whiskers, providing a detailed explanation of what kind of wedding she expected. "There should be flowers, and cake, a really big cake, and I should get to wear a fancy dress." "What about me?" Victoria asked. "Do I get to wear a fancy dress?" "Obviously, you're the bride. Brides always wear fancy dresses." "What color should my dress be? White, or maybe purple? Purple is my favorite." "I'll keep that in mind. And Daddy has to wear a suit. A good one. Not the one he wore to the scary party with your mean mom." "She's not." Victoria started, then stopped. "Okay, that's fair. She was pretty mean." Mr. Whiskers didn't like her. Mr. Whiskers is an excellent judge of character. At the donut shop, Daniel called Dave, while Victoria and Emma debated the relative merits of chocolate versus maple glazed. "It's official," Daniel said. "Ring on her finger," Emma approved. "About damn time." Dave's voice was gruff but warm. "Maria's going to cry for a week. You know that, right? Tell her she can help plan the wedding. That should keep her busy." "Don't joke. She will absolutely take over." "I'm counting on it. Neither Victoria nor I know what we're doing." "When's the date?" Daniel looked through the window at Victoria and Emma, heads together over the donut case, his fiancée in sweatpants and his daughter still in pajamas, both of them laughing at something he couldn't hear. "Soon," he said. "As soon as possible." They got married 3 months later in the backyard of the house they'd made into a home. It wasn't a big wedding. That had been Victoria's only request. No galas, no society events, no 300 strangers watching them exchange vows. Just the people who mattered. Dave served as best man, delivering a toast that made everyone laugh and cry in equal measure. Maria had indeed taken over the planning, transforming their backyard into something magical, with string lights and flowers and borrowed chairs from every neighbor on the block. Marcus walked Victoria down the aisle since Catherine had declined to attend. Her absence didn't cast a shadow. If anything, it made the day feel lighter. No one pretending, no one performing, no one measuring worth by wealth. Emma served as flower girl and ring bearer, simultaneously taking both jobs with the gravity of a 4-year-old entrusted with critical mission parameters. She wore a purple dress, her choice non-negotiable, and carried Mr. Whiskers tucked under one arm for moral support. When the officiant asked if anyone objected to the marriage, Emma shouted, "No!" with such force that the entire gathering dissolved into laughter. Victoria wore white. Simple, elegant, beautiful. Daniel couldn't stop staring at her. "You're staring," she whispered as they stood before their friends and family. "I'm allowed. You're about to be my wife. I've been your wife in every way that matters for months. Now it's official. I want to look." They exchanged vows they'd written themselves. Victoria promised to keep showing up even when things got hard. Daniel promised to keep letting her in even when it scared him. They both promised to love Emma with everything they had and to build a life that honored the past while reaching toward the future. When the officiant pronounced them married, Daniel kissed his wife with the certainty of someone who'd finally stopped fighting what he wanted. The reception was small and warm. Good food, better company. Daniel danced with Victoria to a song Rachel had loved, feeling no conflict between honoring his past and celebrating his present. He danced with Emma too, lifting her so her feet rested on his shoes the way he used to do when she was smaller. "I'm really glad you married Victoria," Emma whispered against his shoulder. "Me too, sweetheart." And Daddy, "Yeah, I think Mommy's glad too. I can feel it." Daniel didn't question how a 5-year-old could know such things. He just held his daughter close and believed that maybe somehow Rachel was watching, that she approved of the man he'd become, and the family he'd built from the broken pieces of his grief. The years passed with the strange speed that comes from living fully instead of just enduring. Daniel's project manager position led to others. His reputation as a leader who stayed calm under pressure and treated his crews with respect opened doors he'd never expected. By the time Emma turned 8, he was running his own construction division. By the time she turned 10, he was a partner. Victoria restructured Shaw Development, completely finding satisfaction in mentoring the next generation of leaders instead of carrying the entire burden herself. She worked reasonable hours. She made it to school plays and soccer games. She was present in ways she'd never been before. Emma grew from a precocious 4-year-old into a thoughtful teenager who split her time between school friends and teaching her younger brothers the proper technique for building block towers that defied physics. The twins Jacob and Michael arrived when Emma was 7. Victoria's pregnancy had been a surprise, announced over dinner one Tuesday, with Emma's eyes going wide and Mr. Whiskers falling off the table in shock. "You're going to be a big sister," Victoria said. "How big?" "Very big. There are 2 of them." Emma had processed this information with characteristic gravity, then declared that she would need a bigger room and additional authority to manage her expanded responsibilities. The twins were chaos incarnate. Identical faces, opposite personalities. Jacob quiet and observant, like Daniel Michael, loud and strategic, like Victoria. They filled the house with noise and mess, and the particular exhaustion that comes from trying to keep 2 toddlers alive simultaneously. Daniel had never been happier. Catherine eventually came around. Not completely, not warmly, but enough to attend holidays and acknowledge that her daughter's choices hadn't ruined her life. The first time she held one of the twins, something in her expression shifted a crack in the armor, the faintest hint that maybe family meant more than she'd allowed herself to admit. "He has your chin," Catherine told Victoria, looking down at Michael. "He has Daniel's stubbornness." That might be useful. The world needs stubborn people. It wasn't an apology. It wasn't reconciliation. But it was something. On a warm evening in June, 15 years after that first meeting in Harbor Coffee, Daniel sat on his back porch, watching his family. Emma was home from her first year of college, arguing good-naturedly with the twins about whether superheroes could actually exist given the laws of physics. She'd grown into an extraordinary young woman. Rachel's eyes, Daniel's quiet strength, and Victoria's fierce determination. She was studying architecture, dreaming of building things that would outlast her. Victoria was in her garden, a hobby she'd taken up 5 years ago, and pursued with the same intensity she'd once brought to corporate acquisitions. Her hands were dirty. Her hair was gray at the temples, and she was laughing at something Marcus had said. He visited often now, bringing his partner and their adopted daughter to family dinners that had become tradition. Daniel watched them all, his wife, his children, his extended family, and felt something he'd stopped believing was possible for him. Peace. Not the absence of problems. Not perfection. Just the quiet certainty that he was exactly where he was supposed to be. Victoria finished her gardening and walked over to join him, settling into the chair at his side with a glass of wine. She was 56 now, silver threading through dark hairlines around eyes that had seen everything from boardrooms to emergency rooms. She'd never looked more beautiful. "You're thinking loud thoughts," she said. "Just remembering." "Remembering what?" Daniel took her hand. The same hand he'd shaken 15 years ago in a coffee shop when she was a stranger with a guarded expression and he was a widower who'd forgotten how to hope. That morning in Harbor Coffee, how close I came to walking away. "But you didn't." "No, I didn't." He laced their fingers together. "Best decision I ever made." "Second best." "What was the first?" "Saying yes when I tracked you down to that grocery store parking lot." Daniel laughed. "You were terrifying, you know. Billionaire stalking a furniture maker. I thought you were going to have me killed." "I considered it when you kept pushing me away." "I was scared." "I know." Victoria squeezed his hand. "So was I, still am sometimes." "Scared of what? Of how much I have to lose now?" She looked out at their family. Emma explaining something to the twins, Marcus's daughter chasing fireflies across the yard, the whole chaotic, beautiful mess of it. "I spent 30 years building walls because I was afraid of this. Afraid of needing people. Afraid of what happens when you love someone and they leave." "Rachel left," Daniel said quietly. "Not by choice, but she left. And it nearly destroyed me." "How did you survive it?" Daniel thought about the question. About the dark months after Rachel died. About the slow, painful process of learning to function again. About Emma's face in the morning, needing him to get up, needing him to keep going. "I survived because I had to. Because Emma needed me. Because giving up would have meant letting Rachel down." He paused. "But surviving isn't the same as living. You taught me that." "I taught you. You showed me that loving again wasn't betraying what I had with Rachel. It was honoring it by being brave enough to try." He turned to face her fully. "I spent 3 years after she died convinced I'd never feel anything again. That the best parts of my life were over. You proved me wrong." Victoria's eyes were bright. "We proved each other wrong." "Yeah." Daniel smiled. "We did." Emma appeared at the porch steps, the twins trailing behind her. "Dad, Mom, Jacob insists that teleportation is theoretically possible and Michael says he's an idiot. I need a tiebreaker." "Teleportation is theoretically possible," Victoria said. "At the quantum level. Practically possible is a different question." "Ha!" Jacob pumped his fist. "Told you." "You're still an idiot," Michael said. "Theoretically possible doesn't count." "It absolutely counts." "Children," Daniel said, using his command voice. Both twins stopped immediately. Emma grinned. She was too old to respond to the command voice now, but she still appreciated seeing it work on her brothers. "Your mother is right. Theoretically possible is different from practically possible. Both of you are partially correct. Now go back to arguing about something else." The twins departed, already bickering about the validity of partial correctness. Emma lingered. "You guys are being nostalgic again," she said. I can tell by your faces." "We're allowed," Victoria said. "We're old." "You're not old. You're distinguished." "That's what old people tell themselves." Emma sat down on the porch steps, legs folded underneath her. Mr. Whiskers, threadbare, now one ear barely attached but still loved, sat beside her. "I was thinking about Mom today," Emma said quietly. Daniel's breath caught. Emma didn't talk about Rachel often, not because she didn't remember, but because the memories lived in a private place she didn't share easily. "What about her?" Daniel asked. "I was looking at old photos, the ones from when I was a baby, and I was thinking about how different my life would have been if she'd lived." Emma traced a pattern on the wooden steps. "Not better or worse, just different." "It would have been different," Daniel agreed. "You wouldn't have met Victoria." "Probably not." "And Jake and Michael wouldn't exist." "No." Emma was quiet for a moment. Then she looked up at Victoria. "I'm glad you exist. That feels weird to say, because it sort of means I'm glad things happened the way they did. And how can I be glad about Mom dying? But I'm glad you're here. I'm glad you're my family." Victoria's eyes filled with tears. "I'm glad you're my family too, Emma. From the very first day. You make Dad happy. Like actually happy. Not just going through the motions happy." Emma smiled. His eyes smile now. "Did you know that they didn't used to?" Daniel remembered Emma saying something similar years ago when she was 4 and wise beyond her years. Your eyes smile now. His daughter had seen what he'd been too scared to acknowledge, that he'd been surviving, not living, that there was a difference. "Come here," Daniel said. Emma moved to sit between them, and Daniel wrapped an arm around her while Victoria took her hand. The three of them sat together, watching fireflies dance across the yard, listening to the twins argue in the distance, feeling the weight and wonder of everything they'd built. "I love you both," Emma said. "And I think Mom would love you too, Victoria. I really do." "I hope so," Victoria said softly. "I've tried to honor her memory. What she gave you, what she and your father had, I never wanted to replace that." "You didn't. You added to it." Emma leaned her head on Daniel's shoulder. "That's what love does. It doesn't replace. It expands." Daniel thought about that. About Rachel gone, but never forgotten. About Victoria present and permanent. About all the ways his heart had grown instead of diminished, even when he'd been convinced it couldn't hold anything more. "When did you get so wise?" he asked. Emma grinned, Rachel's grin bright and unguarded. "I've always been wise, Dad. You just weren't paying attention." Later, after Emma had gone to bed and the twins had finally exhausted themselves, Daniel and Victoria returned to their porch. The night was warm, stars scattered across the sky like someone had thrown diamonds on velvet. "Do you ever regret it?" Victoria asked. "Regret what?" "Any of it. Meeting me, letting me in, everything that changed because of one moment in a coffee shop." Daniel took her hand. "Not once. Not even when my mother threatened to destroy your business. Not even when the press decided I was having a midlife crisis. Not even when the twins flooded the bathroom that time and we had to replace the entire floor. Especially not then. The floor needed replacing anyway." Victoria laughed. "You're a terrible liar." "I'm an excellent liar. I just choose not to lie to you." She leaned against his shoulder, fitting there the way she had from the beginning. Like a piece that had always been missing finally found. "I never thanked you," Victoria said. "For what?" "For that morning. For stepping between me and that man. For not walking away when everything in you was probably screaming to mind your own business. I almost did walk away. But you didn't. And because you didn't, I have this." She gestured at the house, the yard, the life they'd built. All of it. Because one man decided that basic human decency was worth the risk. Daniel thought about the word. Risk. He'd spent so much of his life calculating risks, avoiding them, controlling variables to minimize them. And then Victoria had crashed into his world and forced him to take the biggest risk of all, letting someone in. "I used to think love was something you could lose," he said. "That if you loved once and lost, that was your chance. Used up. Gone. What do you think now?" "I think love is more like a fire. It can burn you, yes, but it can also warm you, light your way, keep you alive when everything else is dark." He turned to look at her. "You were my light, Victoria. When I couldn't find my way out of the grief, when I was just going through the motions, you showed me there was still something worth reaching for." "You showed me too," she said. "I had everything: money, power, success, and I was so lonely I couldn't breathe. You taught me that connection doesn't have to be transactional, that some people are exactly who they appear to be. Basic human decency. There's nothing basic about it, not in my experience." They sat in comfortable silence, watching the stars, feeling the weight of 15 years, and the lightness of knowing they had many more ahead. The next morning, Daniel and Victoria drove to Harbor Coffee. It was something they did every year on the anniversary of their meeting, a pilgrimage to the place where everything started. The shop hadn't changed much. Same worn furniture, same creaky floor, same smell of coffee and possibility. They sat at the same table where they'd had their first real conversation years ago, when Victoria was an enigma and Daniel was a wall. 15 years, Victoria said, holding her cappuccino. "Sometimes it feels like yesterday. Sometimes it feels like we've always been together." "Both can be true." Daniel reached across the table and took her hand. The same hand he'd shaken that first day when she'd introduced herself as Victoria, and he'd wanted nothing except to escape. "Thank you," he said. "For what?" "For being stubborn. For not taking no for an answer. For seeing something in me that I couldn't see in myself." Victoria smiled. "Thank you for stepping up. For being exactly who you appeared to be. For letting me in even when it terrified you." "It still terrifies me sometimes." "Me too." She squeezed his hand. "But that's how we know it matters." They finished their coffee and walked out into the Seattle morning. The city was alive around them, people rushing to work, cars, navigating traffic, the ordinary chaos of a Wednesday that was for everyone else unremarkable. But for Daniel and Victoria, it was everything. A celebration of what they'd built, what they'd survived, what they'd become together. They walked hand in hand down the street where Daniel had once driven away, without looking back, thinking that was the end of the story. It hadn't been the end. It had been the beginning. Daniel Cole had started out trying to protect himself by keeping the world at arm's length. He'd built walls so high, he'd forgotten what it felt like to let anyone climb them. He'd convinced himself that survival was enough, that getting through each day without falling apart was the most he could hope for. And then a woman in a gray coat had refused to be ignored, had tracked him down, challenged his assumptions, broken through every barrier he'd constructed, had shown him that letting someone in wasn't weakness, it was the bravest thing a person could do. Now, 15 years later, Daniel had a wife who loved him fiercely, a daughter who'd grown into someone extraordinary, 2 sons who filled his life with chaos and joy, a home that echoed with laughter, a career he was proud of, a future that felt full of possibility. He had everything he'd been afraid to want. And it had all started with one simple choice: to step forward instead of walking away. Victoria stopped walking and turned to face him. "What are you thinking about?" "About how one moment can change everything. About how scary it was to let you in. About how grateful I am that I did." "Any regrets?" Daniel looked at his wife, at the gray in her hair and the lines around her eyes, and the smile that still made his heart skip after 15 years. "Not a single one," he said. "Not ever." He kissed her on a Seattle sidewalk, the same way he had 1,000 times before, and would 1,000 times again. And when they walked home together, he didn't look back at Harbor Coffee. He didn't need to. The past was where it belonged, honored, remembered, treasured. But the future was in front of him, holding his hand, walking beside him, toward whatever came next. Daniel Cole had lost the love of his life once. He'd been convinced it meant he'd lost his chance at happiness forever. He'd been wrong. Because love wasn't a one-time thing. It wasn't a finite resource that ran out when you used it up. It was a choice made over and over to let someone in despite the fear. To be brave even when everything inside you screamed to hide. Daniel had made that choice 15 years ago in a coffee shop when he'd stepped between a stranger and trouble. He made it again, every day, every time he chose connection over isolation, vulnerability over walls, love over fear. And he would keep making it for the rest of his life. Because that was the secret no one had told him when Rachel died, that the heart didn't have a limit on love. That grief and joy could exist together. That letting someone new in didn't mean letting go of what came before. It just meant you were brave enough to keep living. Daniel Cole, the widowed firefighter who'd built walls so high he'd forgotten what light looked like, had finally learned to let the light in. And it had been worth every terrifying, beautiful, impossible moment.